Hey, do a forge and fire thing so you can get a little flame out of that thing.
No. This hammer face is quite a bit wider than I want it, and so we're going to go ahead and reduce it. But one thing that I see a lot of people do is they grind, as they grind, they try to grind as a flat surface. Everything's about surface area contact when you're grinding, cutting, any of the above. Any of you guys have ever cut a 2x6 or 2x4 with a handsaw, what do? You attack the corner, which creates a corner, and you attack that corner. So when we grind, if we've got a lot of material to take off, we're going to use that same concept. So I'm going to attack this corner, and that's going to create a point, and I'm going to remove that. Anytime you're forging or grinding something, you want to take it there slowly. And what I mean by that is that I took a 1/16 of an inch, 1/16 of an inch, 1/16 of an inch, 1/16 of an inch, and I eased it into center. What happens is if you go and you forge too much or grind too much on one side, your taper or your piece will end up being ground to one side, and you can't save that. Especially in knife making, you grind from a little bit, and that brings it into center. The next thing is as we're trying to forge something round, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a square, then I'll attack the corners, make it octagonal, then I will round it up. So I'm going to remember the acronym SOR, which stands for square, octagonal, round. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a square, attack those corners, surface area contact, octagonal, then I'll attack all of those corners and I'll have a piece of round when I'm done. The other thing is if you'll notice, I was talking about when we were forging that hammer, do you see how the face of the hammer is now narrower than the cheeking? That's what allows wood to stay inside of a hammer like this.
One of the tips of this video is the sanding belt will also take skin, huh?
Hard lesson. Life is full of life lessons. I'm not very good at learning them.
Is that the first time you ever been cut by a sanding belt?
No. I made Dad a fuller one time, and I was grinding right here. Still got the lines from it. I was grinding right here, and I did that thumb first. Like, man, that was dumb. Did the other thumb.
All right, so 2 hammers made. Nice little clipping hammer for Cameron. And a beautiful little rounded hammer for Marcy.
Whenever I handle, the very first thing that I do is I just kind of taper the end. And what I like to do is I'll set it, and what that does is it brings it so it comes right into the center of my hole, and I'll just give it a couple, 2, 3 taps, and what that does is it starts to give me a stop so I know where to grind to. Okay. So what I like to do is I just taper the end of my piece a little bit, then I'll set it inside of my hammer, and I'll give it a couple good licks, and what that does is now I have a mark to know where to grind to. I'll set it there and get a general idea of how deep into that I'm going to be. Now we'll taper everything to that mark that I made by driving it into the hammer. because I ground away from myself, I could see how much I removed. So I kind of ground a little bit on one side, and then I rotated from that side, then I rotated. You can see now that I've ground up to where the shoulder, where that hammer was hitting. Now I'll grind to those shoulders, and then we'll go cut a slit in it and drive it into the hammer. When we split it, what we're looking for is our wedge should come to the center of our eye. Because we have an hourglass to the inside of our eye, our wedge wants to make sure to reach all of that and fill in the center. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to make ourselves a wood wedge. Okay, so I've tapped that hammer on a little bit. Now what we're going to do is we're going to tighten it up by hitting our handle. We'll hold it up. We'll put just a bit of super glue down in that crack. Take our wood wedge. Now it's important that you wear safety glasses when you're driving this in. And the reason that is that super glue will come out and get you. So I'll put just a little bit more. That way it makes sure to get to that wedge. And I'll drive that in. And a lot of times, I'll go ahead and give it a couple taps there. Okay, now that we've driven that wood wedge in, it's filled in that gap all the way around the hammer, and you can even see how it's mushroomed the top out. And so that'll make a very tight hammer handle. When you're working on a hammer handle, the most important thing for me is that it has a swell leading to the butt. And what that does is it's like holding a rope with a knot. And you can hold your hand at one size and your hammer's going to stay into it. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a lot of work here. I've tilted this hammer up in my vise slightly so that I can rasp flat with my vise. And I'm going to do most of my work up towards the top. And I want to leave the butt of that handle as big as I can. The more taper you have, the easier it is to use. I waited to grind the face until I had it handled. The reason that was, if anything was canted, that's when it would show up. So now we've got it handled. Now we'll face it, and we're going to burn the handle, and it'll be job done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to burn the handle. It does two things. If I have any rough edges from rasping it, it's going to burn them off. The second thing it's going to do, it's going to heat it up and open up the pores. And then whenever I quench it in the linseed oil, it'll close up and suck that linseed oil into the handle. And it'll make the handle feel a lot better and last a lot longer. So we're going to put it in. We got a nice even burn. And then I will go straight into the linseed oil. And then I tend to just put a couple drops up there, and that'll suck down. You can see how it's bubbling. Within about 20 minutes, it'll be sucked down at least 3/8 of an inch from the top of that. This is just a piece of 2-inch PVC pipe filled up, capped off, and I just use rolled in. And I'll drive it in so it's really tight. And like I was saying, what I'll do is I'll leave that metal wedge sticking up about that far. The reason for that is now as that hammer comes loose, if it does, I can drive it in the rest of the way. That's saving money in the bank. And also, I don't get too excited about these corners. You can grind those down so that they match the hammer really well. The problem with that is that you don't get that mushroom effect on top. So I tend to leave them just like that. Merry Christmas, Cameron Wetton.
From Jacqueline Wetton.